What is up, guys? Welcome to week 22 of the podcast with Bad B Bryce and Ryan the Rock, all in podcast. What is up, Ryan?
Dude, doing very well today. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Oh, wow. I just took you off the screen. I'm doing well, man. Had a good week. It's a Thursday, only one more day to the weekend. No complaints.
Yeah, I mean, I was super happy. I won a nice little MTT last night. Got a little bank, which was very happy about. Even though it was a small field, feels good to get a win. I feel I had a lot of second place finishes, and we've been doing so much heads up studying that as soon as I got even stacked, and I was like, if I lose this at 20 big blind depth, I'm going to be so pissed, even though it's super shallow.
Yeah, you were the short stack going into the final three, right? And you came back.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, the person to my immediate right made it particularly easy because they were limping every hand from the small blind and then betting pot on every flop. So it's like, it's amazing. It's just like, great. I can profitably either check, shove. I can do anything I want pre-flop. I can see a flop cheaply, and then I know you're going to bet pot. So I can obviously just play perfectly against that.
Very exploitable.
Easy. Very exploitable.
That's awesome. Would you like the honors of introducing our guest today?
Oh, well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. This week's guest on All In is one of the kinder faces that you'll find in the high-stakes poker world. Chase Bianchi is a high-stakes cash game specialist and tournament crusher from Columbia, Maryland. From humble beginnings as a college dropout card dealer at Washington casinos, Chase is now a WSOP bracelet holder with just shy of $1 million in live tournament winnings. He has a following over 10,000 people on his social media accounts, where he shares everything from poker memes to his bad beats to board games. Be sure to catch him on live at the bike streams as soon as the Instagram game returns. And without further ado, let's welcome Chase Bianchi to the All In podcast.
What's up, fellas?
How we doing?
Yeah, that was an impressive intro.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I try to do some research on it. So we wanted to have a conversation today. The settlement for the Stones conundrum, shall we call it, has officially come out, and the legal ramifications we've gone over previously on the podcast. It's really hard, especially in California, to pin someone for cheating at poker. But recently, one of the directors of the poker room, Jason Karitis, has taken control of the Stones Twitter. Justin Karitis, taking control of the Stones Twitter and of his own Twitter, and has really gone after the poker community for going after him. And I just think personally that he's continuing to dig a hole really deep for himself, because it's the more that he digs this, the more it becomes even more clear to us that he had some involvement in this.
Yeah, he basically said that people cherry-picked evidence, and that there's just... Yeah, he just doesn't think that Mike Postle cheated. I mean, it's crazy. Like, there's so much evidence, and he just didn't bluff in so many spots that would make sense based on his bluff. Like, it's just so crazy, Chase. So we'd love to hear... we'd love to hear your input.
Well, it's pretty wild. Like, it's pretty easy to think that Justin was involved, and a lot of things point towards he was. And if he wasn't involved, like, man, the cognitive dissonance to be that close to it and not, I could definitely see a world in which he had no idea and this happened right in front of him and he just can't comprehend that it was happening. Like, it's so mind-blowing that this big thing happened right under his nose. So that's possible, but man, he is going about this the worst way. He's just, like you said, digging a hole. Whoever's telling him to do this or like patting him on the back is a terrible friend. Like, how could you tell your friend to do that? He's just watching a train wreck. It's bad.
Totally agree.
It's every day, too. It's not like he had one statement, one tweet. It's every single day for the last few weeks. He's just continuing to dig this hole for himself. And it's sad to watch.
He's now made the poker community as a whole so frustrated to the point where Phil Galfond and Sean Deeb have now come out and said, we're going to go through all 8,000 hours. 8,000 hours of Stones Live with Postle on it and break down each hand. And they're like, we're going to prove statistically that it's impossible for him to achieve what he achieved there. And I just, I feel bad for him, because had he maybe made a statement and then shut his mouth afterwards, this would have blown over. But because he continues, and because the Stones Twitter and his own Twitter continues to be the source of memes for the poker community, that's just what he's going to turn himself into. And that's just sad.
Yeah, and if he is involved, like, him talking is just implicating himself. Like, there's going to be something that he slips up and says something dumb, and we have so much data on it. And one thing that's really cool is you have Galfond, he's like outsourcing to the community, essentially. He's like mass human volunteers, man hours putting into it. Then you have Berkey on the other side. He's like automating it. He's having someone program a screen scraper. So we're really going to get like 2 looks at the data and get to even like verify the data by itself, by both of those guys doing it. So there's going to be irrefutable evidence that he cheated, almost certainly.
Oh,
right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, we won't pound this topic too much into you guys. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing about the cheater of Mike Postle, but we'll get into the interview section. Ryan, you want to hit the first question?
So I wanted to start off, as we referenced in the intro, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the beginning of your poker career. So I understand that you were a baseball player, quite talented one, who got a scholarship to go to college for baseball, but decided to drop out and move to Washington. So, to be a card dealer. So I would first like to ask you, how did you convince your parents that this was a good idea? And number 2, what was the experience like moving to Washington at 18 years old?
Yeah, I didn't really convince my parents. Luckily, my parents are pretty supportive of like, kind of like, go figure it out and you're going to be okay, and we'll support you regardless. So my baseball scholarship was like, it wasn't anything prestigious. It was a little junior college, drive past the cows to get to school sort of thing. So I wasn't, and I just like baseball. I was good at baseball as a pitcher and I enjoyed it, but this wasn't I wasn't going to the Yankees from this place. So
right.
Once I got to school, I was just like, oh, I don't want to do this. So then I really had nothing to do. I worked like a dead end job for a little while, and my dad was living in my stepmom got a job in just outside Seattle, like an hour outside Seattle. And the gambling age was 18 there, and I was like, okay. So I moved out there and worked at casinos, and yeah, it kind of just made history from there, wrote itself.
If plenty of people talk about like the gig as a dealer, and I feel like it's so casino dependent. Were the casinos you worked for good, and did you enjoy your job as a dealer?
It varies a lot. So the little podunk casinos that were hour or so outside Seattle, I mean, yeah, you could make good money for a high school education, making like $300 a night. It's not bad money, and it can be a fun job, but it becomes a grind, like it's almost like manual labor, except it's not very labor intensive, obviously. Yeah. But it's just kind of a monotonous job, customer service industry, kind of what you'd expect. Pretty good money though.
Were you allowed to play and deal at the same casino? I know a lot of casinos today don't allow that.
It depended. I've had places where you actually kind of had to play where you were working, because it was such a small casino. Like if they needed help starting a game or something, they'd be like, hey, have a dealer hop in and play for 20 minutes to get this game going.
Yeah, that's what Kenan said as well, who actually works at a casino in Washington. But leading into our next question, if I'm not mistaken, I recall you discussing in a podcast how you went broke numerous times when getting your career started. What would you consider your turning point, and how did you go from a mid-stakes grinder to a high-stakes crusher?
So I did go broke a lot, and I don't really regret it. So I was young and I didn't have many responsibilities, so I think I really had a lot of leeway of going broke. Didn't have any serious implications on like my family or people that were depending on me. Really though, I think just having a little more responsibility really like helps ground me. I had a pastor that used to say like men are like trucks and they drive straighter with a heavy load. So in the same way, like I can't go broke now, like I have a wife and kids that I can't let them, I can't go broke. So
right.
I really like that quote.
That's a really great quote. I love that.
I know, it makes a lot of sense too.
It does. So, I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you, and I'm sure you get asked all the time about winning a WSOP bracelet. So let's flash back to a much happier time, the 2016 WSOP. There's no social distancing. We're all happy at the tables. It's the end of what I can only imagine was a tough WSOP series for you. This is like the end of these 2 weeks. So this is one of your last events. You said it yourself afterwards that you couldn't have written the story better yourself. What parts of that story are still really vivid for you today? And just what sticks with you about the experience beyond the bracelet itself?
Yeah, I remember probably one of my favorite parts of it was my best friend lived in LA. And I was like, I'm like calling him on break. I'm like filling him in. I'm like, oh man, this happened. Like, oh, we're getting close to the final table. We're down to a couple tables. And he's like, screw it. I'm hopping on my Prius with my girlfriend and we are driving. And they drove like 100 miles an hour in Prius to get there and rail it. So that was really cool to get to share it with him because I didn't really have too many, I didn't have like a big rail, I just had like him and his girl and maybe a couple other people that I just knew from like Colorado and Seattle. So
yeah,
getting to share with him was really special.
Yeah, it's particularly hard to get the East Coasters out. And I would assume, was the FT like a same day thing, not like a main event where it stops one day and then starts the next?
Yeah, I think we resumed with like 3 tables and played it out. It's not that it was small, but it was only in 1K. It wasn't like live streamed or anything. So we didn't even go in the Thunderdome, which was kind of disappointing. You always think if I make the final table, I'm in the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed by that too, because I spent the better part of like 2 hours trying to find a recording of that final table. And, I couldn't find a recording, but I did find a list of the people who were on it. And so your final table was a relatively inexperienced table with really the exception of Robert Romanello, who had won 2 WPT titles and an EPT title before you guys ended up 3-handed. How prepared were you for the final table in general? And was it really a sigh of relief when Rob went out in third and you were now heads up with a rank?
One thing that was surprising and very fortunate for me about that tournament was when we were down to 3 tables, there was numerous very talented players left. And they just kept off. Like I coolered the heck out of this this Asian guy from LA that's a killer, really good cash game player. And my friend told me about him. He's like, hey, I think his name was Danny. Danny's still in, and he's a really good player. And I cooler him, and then he moves to balanced tables, and he gets like aces in against kings, and the guy hits a king, and he's out. And then there was like 2 or 3 other good players that they just like lost a couple flips, and they were out. Yeah. So really, I kind of didn't meet any resistance, even at the final table. The guy you were talking about, Romanello or something?
Romanello, yes. Yeah.
I thought he was going to give me a harder time because I like looked up his Hendon mob, but he just played like type passive, and I just kind of, I was surprised he made it that far, honestly.
Wow.
Fair enough.
That's awesome.
Doesn't sound too intimidating. It's good that you had a pretty clean run there.
Yeah, I tried to like punt it at one point. I got it in with like pocket 5s against kings, but I had everyone out chipped, so it's like it cost me half my stack or whatever, but ran it back up.
It happens. Congrats on the win. I'm sure you still think about it fairly often.
And at the end of the day, you're the one with the bracelet, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, moving into our next question. I know you grinded at MGM National Harbor, which is where I play a ton, before moving out to Boston. I've mentioned on this podcast before how juicy the low and mid stakes action games are, but how would you personally rate the mid and high stakes games? And this kind of is a different question, but what inspired the move, and was it difficult to convince your wife to move again for poker?
Yeah, so I mean, I have moved from Colorado to Maryland to play in Maryland, and moved there because the poker is good there. I think one thing is like being in these emerging markets, which is also why I'm now in Boston. Being in these places where you have these like regional casinos that open up, I think the games are really good for like 5 to 10 years. So I think it's really profitable to consider moving to these places. But yeah, it really depends. Poker's become like much more localized as opposed to like the mecca of LA or Vegas. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for these local card rooms to find some good games, even some high stakes games. if the room can support it, if the economy can support it.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, MGM definitely can run some bigger games, especially on weekends. But
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. It's been interesting to see this kind of boom recently of small card rooms, where like a lot of the older ones that were quasi dying out are now super active again, and there's more like new poker clubs coming out that are really exciting. And I kind of like the idea of having, you know, really solely a poker room with like arcades and fun things to do outside of that. So I'm a big fan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Obviously, your wife's been very supportive of your poker through the years, but was it difficult for her at all to move, or was she just all aboard?
It was. I mean, it was both. It was very difficult. She grew up in Colorado. She was born in Colorado, raised in Colorado, and yeah, she was like, you know, I got her through. I worked 2 jobs to get her through college, get her master's degree, and then I was like, I can't do this anymore. So she was very supportive. She said, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to give poker a shot again. I'd done it before, given it up for a couple years, and just grinded a casino job and working at UPS for a while, or FedEx rather. And I was just like, I can't grind forever. So she was very supportive. She wanted me to pursue something that I was passionate about, and you know, she let us sell our house and fund my bankroll. And
that's love, my
I
guy.
haven't lost the house yet, so we're good.
There we go. That's big. Yeah, you got some more responsibilities now opposed to 18-year-old Chase.
Yep.
Ryan, you want to hit him with the next question? Looks a little frozen.
Ooh, yeah, we got frozen Ryan here.
I'll steal your question, Ryan. I hope you don't mind. I feel like this is definitely a question he wanted to ask, but you haven't pulled punches when talking about poker scammers, such as the notorious New York Poker King. You got the opportunity on Live at the Bike to run a really significant bluff on the 2-5 Instagram game, forcing him off an overpair with a river shove facing a bet. How did the beef between you and New York Poker King start, and are things resolved today?
So it's weird. I didn't really have a beef with NYPK. It's just we're both poker people on Instagram. So there's only so many people that like have decent, well, there's more now, but there's only a number of people that have decent followings on Instagram. So naturally, like, I see people playing on his side, I see him posting about this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, ooh, this looks like he's not holding player funds. He's doing these weird shady payout things. And I was like, I'm pretty sure people are going to get screwed. So I just spoke up about it. I'm like, I'm not making accusations, but I think this looks terrible. And of course, I mean, he was scamming people. So he, of course, made it a big beef and like made it into a fight. I'm like, I'm not picking a fight with the guy. I'm just warning people like, this looks like it could be a scam.
Oh, so he likes to pick fights with people. Obviously, him and Ryan DePaulo, him and anyone who says anything negative about him.
He likes to pick internet fights. When it comes to in-person, and not that I'm not talking about physical fights, but like when I see him in person, I'll like say hi to him. I was playing a WPT event, got sat directly next to him, said hi to him. Like, not trying to fight the guy, but it's like in person. Of course, he doesn't back anything up. He's just like this online persona.
Makes sense. So it actually feeds into a question a little bit. Do you play much online at all? I know you're mainly a live player, but do you play on these like third-party apps, Poker Bros, PP Poker, whatever it may be?
No, I definitely don't play any of these app games. I'm kind of opposed to them in general because I think they're ripe for cheating. But I do play some on Ignition, grind a little bit of cash. I've been trying to do a little bit more of that lately. Obviously, pandemic stuff and just games are not great right now, man. Poker's pretty rough right now, wherever you are. Yeah. Even here, when I have poker games, it's pretty rough. Hey, welcome back.
Hello.
Have there been less higher stakes games? Because I feel like just viewing your stories, I've noticed you've like been playing a lot of 2-5 and like the 5-10 games are just so reg filled. Have you found that you've had to move down as a result of COVID?
So I was mostly playing at Encore in Boston. They have not opened their poker room up yet. So my only option is these little New Hampshire casinos, and their state law is $1,000 max buy-in on any game. So the biggest game that runs is 5-10 no limit with $1,000 cap. And it doesn't even run that often. It runs a couple days a week. So really my only option is like 2-5 for probably half my volume and then some 5-10.
Yeah, that's definitely not ideal. Because obviously you play 5-10 and up typically, but hopefully poker's been all right. Live poker. Yeah, quarantine poker's been pretty good for us. We've been playing on the apps. I've been playing some live. Ryan has not. But I definitely understand why you would not trust those apps after, whether it be New York Poker King, which Ryan, you missed that question.
All good.
You would have loved to ask that.
All good.
But yeah, hopefully COVID gets better and you can go back to playing those higher stake games.
Yeah, and a lot of the apps are just privatized, right? Like
Yeah.
I was playing on one guy's private game for a little while. It was a great game, but they like kicked all the pros off essentially.
Yeah.
I know I have friends that play on like the local player started a group, but the guy that runs it had told my friends that like I'll never get in. So it's like
because you're too good.
Yeah, essentially, like I'm friendly with the guy, friendly with all the players, and this is where it's a shame that it's privatized. It's just, man, not like.
Oh, that's incredibly annoying. Ironically, Ryan's allowed in a private club game that they will not let me in, and I'm pretty frustrated about it because it's our buddy who runs it. But anyways,
it does.
Ryan, do you want to hit him with the seventh question?
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about your bankroll management strategy, and you've often said that small stakes players and mid stakes players don't shot take enough. Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting question for me specifically, as someone who I've only really been in the game for about like a year and a half. And as a small stakes person who's building a roll, at what point do you really see shot taking as something that someone like me should do?
So I think you should have whatever your normal game is, like, what is it, 1-2?
1-2. Yep.
1-2. Yeah. What's your amount of 1-2 where you're like, oh, I'm pretty comfortable. I've got like 10 buy-ins or 15 buy-ins, where if I would say once you get to that point, just like every once in a while, save up a buy-in for the bigger game and shot take. And also, like, I don't know your current situation, but if you're like financially able to just like set aside a buy-in or two a month to shot take, I mean, you can do that too.
Right.
It's really dependent on like what your risk tolerance is.
I feel like that's the biggest struggle for me is risk tolerance, especially as a beginning player, where it's not really the game strength that concerns me as much as losing $1,000 versus losing a couple hundred. So I don't know. I feel like that'll come with time and with feeling more comfortable at the tables.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're just not in a position to lose a couple $1,000, then don't do it. I mean,
right.
But I do think that you have pretty accelerated growth as you shot take as well. So like there's some intrinsic value there of playing a bigger game. Like, oh, I'm really going to grind hard and study the spot. And I think you're going to grow a lot from it too. So there's value outside of the game.
That's a really interesting point. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Chase. And for online players listening, the rake structure can actually be like horrible at these lower stakes. I know one union that quite literally rakes 8 big blinds at even 51, whereas they're raking 2 big blinds max at these bigger stakes, and it's just ridiculous. And live poker, obviously, whether it be from tipping or the rake, like 1-2 and 1-3 games, like it's just brutal. So obviously, you don't want to throw yourself in a 2-5 game or 5-10 game if you haven't been studying, haven't put in the work.
No.
But yeah, I absolutely agree with what Chase said. So Chase,
one more thing. I also think if you have like something to look forward to, it might motivate you to play a little more, study a little more. So I think there's some motivation in moving up.
I agree.
Moving up stakes is very like motivating. At least it has been for me in the past, and so that's another thought too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that.
So you've been playing poker for a long time and just been around it. What would you say your craziest casino story is? It can be from your dealing days or something you've seen crazy going on at the table. Does anything come to mind?
The dealers see it all.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. So I have actually caught 2 dealers stealing money while I've been playing. Mid-game. So here's one thing, like I'm a dealer, I know what you're doing. Like there's things that you're doing that I'm like, why are you playing with those chips? Why are you doing it? So I've actually caught 2 dealers stealing and like reported them. One of them, I think, lost their job and didn't get prosecuted. One of them, I came back like a week later and they're still working. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And I just never played at that place again. Both times I caught them stealing the like player's bonus drop. Yeah, dirty.
That's
Oh my
really
gosh.
dirty. Wow.
That's crazy.
You expected to be like, slipping a bit out of the rake or something, but
Once
wow.
you saw that, did you continue to tip them? Did you stay in the game, or what did you do?
So I stayed in the game and I was like, okay, because like you can mix up some chips and I accidentally dropped the wrong one. I see it happen like a lot actually. But when you stay in the game, you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna see if they do it again. And they do it again, and then you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna wait until the next time they come to deal my table. And then you're like, okay, call the police. But yeah, tell the floor and get it taken care of.
my
That's
gosh,
so funny.
That's crazy.
That's so funny. Bart Hansen had a caller the other day who had a very similar situation where he literally stayed at the poker table and didn't play a single hand because there was one dude at the table who was marking cards. So he was like, I just want to see how this turns out. Because every orbit, they'd return the cards to the dealer and the dealer would be like, we need a new deck. One of you is marking the cards.
At least they recognized it immediately. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Oh no.
But yeah, our last question before we go into your hand history is just, if you have one piece of advice to listeners who take this game seriously, what would that piece of advice be?
One piece of advice, I would say just make sure you have know what you want to get out of poker and have it be something healthy. So it's totally fine if you want to play poker recreationally and you want to blast it off one day a week and just play tarot. That's fine. It can be just a hobby for you to
Come join our game, please.
yeah, seat open on my right, please. But know what you want to get out of poker, and really, like, I think if you know what your goals are and what you want to get out of it, even if that's just a purely recreational pursuit, I think you're gonna have a better time with poker. I think you're gonna have better direction with poker, and just a better relationship with poker. And just
really
like yeah, don't. There's nothing. I think we like oversell the idea of becoming like a world beater in poker, when the real dream is just to play poker for fun.
I totally
Absolutely,
agree.
man.
I
Well
totally
said.
agree. That's great.
Do you have any closing questions, Ryan?
No,
before we go into the hand history?
I got nothing. I was very interested by this hand that you gave us today because
Me as well.
I put together, I used this little software and put together the hands, and we weren't told the outcome, and I was left on quite the cliffhanger. So here we are. This is what are we playing here? We're playing 5-10, yes? Yeah, we're playing 5-10. You're 150 big blinds effective.
Actually, it was a 2-5.
Was
It was actually a
2-5 with a
2-5
straddle?
game. It might have been a straddle or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can play like this. It's totally fun.
Yeah, so we wake up with ace king on the button, pretty good holding, and there's one limp, and then the cutoff makes it 40. What are you thinking when you wake up on the button with Big Slick?
Yeah, typical. Just this is obviously a hand I'm going to 3-bet. I've been 3-betting Frosty quite a bit. He's a little splashy, a little loose, but also like not giving it away. The guy's clearly got some clue. So I typically go 3x in position, 4 or 5x out of position.
Standard?
Yeah.
And any comments on that, Ryan?
No, I got no comments on that. I think the only thing I would add is that, the nice part about being on the button here and 3-betting is that we could be doing this with and a lot of hands. I mean, everything from suited connectors. We can be 3-betting a lot of our range here. So having ace king is great because now we're 3-betting for value.
I like this software, Ryan. While I haven't figured out the full screen, it's nice that it says the amount of big blinds. That's cool.
That's so nice.
So the flop comes Jack 6-5, 2 diamonds, and Villain decides to check it over to you. So what are you thinking on this board?
So this board, high card, small card, 2 small cards, 2 diamonds. I'm typically going to have like around a third pot c-betting strategy with most of range here. We could work in some checks, but especially with the diamond in our hand, I think we're mostly going to be betting with this hand.
Yeah,
That's a really interesting point. So, I mean, Bryce always harks on me about the way I play ace king post flop. because I tend to be a little
So passive, bro.
a little passive, a little fitter fold with my ace king. So I like the point that you make that ace king with the king of diamonds is more of a bet than if it was ace king, ace of clubs, king of spades. I agree.
Absolutely.
I think I would
yes.
tend to bet most of range here, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially
Oh,
as a
100%.
3-better.
Yeah, exactly.
As do I. Ryan, you need to stop being a bit. And Frosty decides to put in the call. Queen of Diamonds comes, which is an interesting card. Obviously, the front door flush gets there, and we have the King of Diamonds in hand. So what do you perceive this? Do you perceive this to be a good card? Obviously, we have the King of Diamonds and have the second nut flush draw, and we still have the gutter ball to
Nut straight.
Yeah, nut straight. So how do you feel about this card, even before he leads into you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great card. We pick up equity. It's overall good for our range being an over card. Kind of hits us in general. And his small lead, I guess we'll start with that and I'll let you guys have some input.
Yeah.
With the small lead, yeah. Go ahead, Bryce.
So absolutely, the queen I think is a good card for you, and holding the king of diamonds, you block a lot of diamonds, that diamond flushes that he could have. So obviously he can't have the king 10 of diamonds. We don't expect him to really ever have he could have king 9 diamonds sometimes, but from the cutoff that would be a fairly loose of a raise, but not necessarily horrible in position. So having the king of diamonds I think is so important. Had we not had the king of diamonds, I wouldn't like your play as much, even though this queen is so good for your range. I think having that king is pretty good, but at the same time, he could have ace 10 of diamonds, which would make some sense here, but would he play it that passively on the flop? He could, assuming we could have it overpair a decent amount of time. Going pretty depth into all the different.
No, I'm with you.
I think that the play you make that we have not shown, I am in love with, to be honest with you. Definitely bold, and I think that I'm interested in hearing about it because he's a loose, aggressive player. So I'm wondering what hands you think he would end up calling with. So I've been spoiling it. So before Ryan even adds a comment, Hero decides to rip in his face. So Ryan, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting spot here, with especially containing the king of diamonds in your hand. But I totally agree with what you're saying. Having the king, the queen, and the jack of diamonds accounted for, the only nut diamond they can have is the ace of diamonds. So we block the significant portion of their calling range. Not to mention the fact that we also block both of the overpairs that could theoretically exist here. I don't know. So what really made you lean towards putting this as a shove here? Because you do have decent equity, as you said. You got 9 outs to the second nut flush. You still can hit a 10. Why'd you shove instead of just flatting here?
So there's a couple things that lean me more towards shoving, and I think you should probably call some of the time. I don't think you should just rip this every time.
Right.
But some things that lean me towards shoving is, for one, when we make a flush here, we're often not getting action. So taking our equity now and just taking our flushes versus whatever that we hit on the river is kind of appealing if we don't think we're getting paid a lot. Also, I think a leading, like in a 2-5, 5-10 game, someone leading here, I find it not, especially for a smallish sizing, I think it tends to not be like super nutted hands. I think it's often hands that just kind of want protection, that are kind of unsure what to do. Say maybe like if he had ace queen, or he has like ace jack with ace of diamonds or something, which we need to be concerned about those calling off. That's a problem too. But or just like a bear king queen or something like that, or even like pocket kings, just something that he's not sure what to do. Maybe even queen jack. So all these hands I think could conceivably bet fold, and I think people just tend to overfold in big pots in like small mid stakes games anyway. So just kind of like player pool, I don't see a lot of leads with super nutted hands here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think we discussed briefly what hands
point.
we were afraid of him having, but I think his lead, like you said, just screams not nutted. I feel like just based on how this hand played out, if he had, say, ace 5, ace 4, ace 10 of diamonds, he would just not play the hand this way.
Can I ask you a question, Chase?
Sure.
let's say Frosty had, instead of check calling flop, had check raised and then led on this turn card. Obviously, stacks would be a little bit shallower here, depending on what his sizing was. But I would imagine that would change the way you evaluate this turn card. Am I wrong there?
You're right. Yeah, him betting a diamond turn is pretty concerning if he check raises flop, because most of his range is going to be like sets and probably combo draws or nut flush draw. All of which we're not doing nearly as well against. Whereas if we get it in like against like queen jack right here, it's kind of not a big deal. We have a lot of fold equity here. Whereas if he's check raising and betting turn, it's pretty hard for him not to have anything.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think I very much agree with your read, and I'm assuming villain folds here, but we do not know the results of this hand. So Chase, do you want to close us out here?
I will reveal. We shove and he snaps with pocket queens.
Oh no!
Which is, it makes sense. He's like kind of trying. He's got a hand that he's trying to protect, like we were saying.
Yeah.
But he's got one that he has to call off. So yeah, he calls off pocket queens and we break.
Yeah.
Oh, no diamond, damn. I like your line. I mean, obviously it didn't work out for you here, but I think your logic was very sound, and I think the majority of the time this isn't a nutted hand. And I mean, we're right in the sense he's not nutted. I mean, obviously a set is just queens are not getting away from her, obviously. Ever.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was a good play, and obviously I'm sure you feel pretty good about it. So yeah, just didn't get the result this time.
Yeah, I felt good about it. It's he's definitely got that one hand where he's like sort of trying to protect it, but he's also calling off, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
Right, and I feel like that's such a narrow portion of his range. It's basically just queens and jacks. And if we're so concerned about 6 combinations of hands, then we're probably not playing this spot properly.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I like the aggressive play. I really do. That's cool.
100%. But yeah, very much appreciated having you on the podcast today, Chase. Very great conversation. Appreciated this hand. And yeah, good luck crushing it. Hopefully the games pick up in your area. And yeah, I hope we cross paths in the future and hopefully play a game with you sometime, man.
Dude, fingers crossed. We can run into each other at Maryland Live one day.
Or Encore. I'll go out.
Or Encore. I'll go to Boston. Heck yeah.
Come to Boston, man. Hey, if you guys want to play some Among Us.
Dude, I played some last night. I'm in, dude. That sounds like fun.
We got some poker players on Discord. I was just playing.
That's where they were playing last time. I will DM you right after this.
I'll give you 4-1 Chase as the imposter.
All right. Have a good night, Chase. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Chase.
Good night, fellas. I enjoyed it. Have a good one.
Thank you. Alrighty,
Oh,
so
man.
let's pull up the next hand we have for you guys. I might have to say this might be my favorite podcast so far.
Oh,
man. I
yeah,
think
Chase is such a nice guy.
Yeah,
Chase is such a nice guy.
love his vibe, man. But,
Yeah,
let's pull up
apologize
this
for my
next one.
Chrome crashing there. That was interesting.
You had to get me back for that one time. The electricity in my entire city went out. So yeah.
And then I rambled on for 15 minutes. I did pretty well.
Yeah, you did okay.
Yeah, okay.
I think I did better. Anyways, so this is a viewer submission, I believe, right? Not your hand?
Yeah. So this one's a little weird. It is a 5-5-10. So it's 5-5 with a straddle to 10. So the under the gun person is actually our viewer, and this isn't a min raise to 10. This is a straddle.
So before we get into this hand, I want to yell at Ryan for attempting to message me his thoughts on this hand. I actually have no idea what happens on this hand because I like the organic feel of the podcast. But Ryan, if you want to prep yourself before because you can't handle doing it like during, I understand. But yeah. So anyways, we straddle and wake up with ace jack suited. Let's see what happens.
I actually forgot
I
the
have
pre-flop
no idea.
action. I forgot the pre-flop action.
Okay.
Oh, actually, yeah, we're going to get
What?
completes from the blinds.
Okay.
So actually, the small blind is completing there, which is
Okay.
what I was trying to show. But the problem is that, I can't show him completing because it isn't actually a straddle. So he didn't actually raise to 15. He completes to 10, and the big
Okay.
blind completes to 10. Then our viewer raises up to 45
and
which-
gets called just by the small blind pro.
by, I actually think he gets called by both.
Okay, well your graphics horrible, but anyways, obviously when you get ace jack in the spot in a straddle pot, like you're gonna be bumping it up. I like the sizing. I think 45 or 50 is absolutely fine. Yeah.
And
I mean,
this is a unique spot, especially considering we're in the straddle and you're facing two limpers who are going to be out of position. What a weird spot.
to be honest, considering we're in position, I think 45 is the
Is
absolute perfect
perfect.
sizing.
Exactly.
I might go 50-55 out of position, but in position, I think it's perfect.
Right.
Love your sizing, and let's see what happens. So apparently, there's 2 calls.
No, just
okay.
one. Never mind. Okay.
Oh, there is
It's
none.
alright.
You were wrong for
I was
like
wrong.
the 3rd time. Yeah, a ton of shit. Anyways, so the pro checks to us, and obviously this is a good board for our range. How would you proceed with this board, Ryan?
Yeah.
I think knowing you either bet really small or check. I think you bet like 1/3 a pot.
That's really interesting. I think I would bet a 1/3 a pot if not for the fact that there's a flush drawn board. So I think because there's a flush drawn board, there's an argument to go closer to half pot. But I think
agree.
anything over half pot is unreasonable here.
Oh, I completely agree with that too. I think 40%, totally great. I'm very interested in how he sizes. He goes 45.
Which is, yeah,
So
that's
he went
fine.
45 and a 95. I love it. That's exactly what I would size. And we get raised to 125. Wow. Okay. So I don't see any argument for doing anything but flatting here. Yeah. Do you have any comment other than that?
I don't disagree. We do, it's a small blind limper, so it's really strange when a small blind limper who just limp called check raises us on queen jack jack. I tend to weight this more towards like medium flush draws.
No, I think he could easily have a hand. It's interesting because he just limped. I expect a hand like queen 10 of spades if it comes to you to bump it up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think he might. Yeah, I just don't even know what to put him on. Like ace 9 of spades. This is just weird. You know what I mean? Like I don't know exactly what holding. Because if you had a hand like 10 queen of spades, obviously go ahead bump it up. But if you have a hand like that, why would you not raise in a straddled pot when it folds to you? King Jack offsuit,
especially as a pro.
King Jack offsuit actually right now makes more sense to me raising than these other hands. Obviously, we're not folding here ever, and I don't think bumping it up makes much sense at all because you fold out his shitty spade draws.
Right.
So yeah, I think we're flatting here 100% of the time. I'm just so interested into how to range this opponent exactly. Obviously, we're putting him on a flush draw. A worse jack, do we think a hand like Jack 10, Jack 9 off does this? If they do, I think it's bad, but not horrible. I mean, obviously, he can put us, you're not going to cap us at ace, king, aces, you know what I mean? But
right.
Opponent does have more jacks here than us, but I just think it's such an interesting raise.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happens this hand.
I do. Huh.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm assuming we just flat.
But I totally agree with your analysis. I think this is a pretty standard flat.
Oh no! Turn brings the 4 of spades, and he leads to 25. Brutal. I don't think you can fold here. 0 cents in raising. You're an absolute donkey if you raise. Reevaluate river. And potentially fold to a river bet, depending on sizing.
Yeah, so it is interesting. It's 225 into 570. So when we call here, we're going to have a little bit more than the pot in our stack. Our SPR will be slightly more than 1, which is good.
Stack to pot ratio.
Stack to pot ratio, which is important.
For our nerds like Ryan.
For our nerds, right? Because that gives us the ability to apply pressure on rivers. Or, if this guy does have a nut flush and we turn out rivering something that like an ace or something we can get max value on, then we can really evaluate just putting it all in there.
Absolutely. Even there's so many cards that could come on the river that we like. A king, I don't expect him to be betting a king like this ever at all. Obviously. So if a king comes, we can expect to be ahead of obviously all his flushes. A 4 comes, we've got a boat. An ace comes, we've got a boat. We've got outs to make this call. And there's no sense in raising because we get absolutely snapped by probably any flush.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm assuming we just flat here and let's see what happens. All right, so the river's a 3 and small blind pro jams. To be frankly honest with you, I like a fold here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know what hands he's doing with here that jams river. If he has a hand, like we said, like Queen Jack, 10 Jack, 9 Jack, any Jack doesn't play like this. It just doesn't. Because we could have the flushes. We could even have pocket kings. Obviously, that's not too often. But like, what is the opponent putting us on? Like, that calls turn and folds river. Because if we have the nut flush on turn, I think we play this
We're not going
exact same
away.
way.
Yes.
So assuming this is a competent pro, which most pros are, I think you just have to lay this down. It's sick and it's gross, and yeah, I just think you got to lay it down. What do you think?
I tend to agree. You know, so from a mathematical standpoint here, we're calling off like 800 to win like 2,400. So we're getting like 3-1 on a call, which means we need to be right here about 25% of the time. So with that being said, if we're thinking about the small blind's 3 barreling range, considering it's so flush heavy, like, you know, and I guess it's just really flush heavy. And I think for that reason specifically, I agree with you that it really is a laydown.
Name a bluff. I mean, unless he has, like, the only real bluff I can think of is, like, having the ace of spades with the other jack. Which isn't exactly a bluff. You know what I mean? Like, it's a semi-bluff. And, like, I can't name a hand that makes sense here. Like,
and when you're in that situation, it's always a good decision just to lay it down and take the lowest variance route.
Yeah, when you hear 25% of the time, you're like, oh, I'm probably
really good here at 25.
But what? Name hands. Like, name hands.
Right.
And if you can't do that against a competent opponent, like if we're playing a donkey, okay, snap here sometimes, whatever.
Yeah.
But you told us he's a pro. This hand, I feel like, played itself, and river, you just gotta fold. Please fold. Yes. Thank you. I really like this player, and I have agreed with the vast majority of the lines that he submitted to us.
Yeah.
And I really like his fold here.
Would you like to know what the pro had?
Villain says you're good and mucks without seeing the hand. What did the villain have?
Villain had Jack 9. Yeah.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Wow. I am going to shoot him a message right after this podcast and say you made the right decision.
Yeah, I totally
do not care that you were not good here. You made the right decision.
I think you made the right decision too. Yeah, it's way more profitable to fold here than it is to call.
Yeah, wow.
In the long term.
Don't you like how I didn't know what would happen? Like that.
Yeah, that was cute. That was really nice. How am I supposed to set up these hands without knowing what happens, Bryce?
Okay. It's about time you threw some shade in my direction. I've just been crapping on you for months on this podcast, and you've just allowed it to happen. So I'm glad you stood up for yourself.
Work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So this next hand, I believe, is actually, I think, the same person. And
it is,
While other hands were submitted, one, I like the stakes, one, I like the thought process by you, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, both of these spots were particularly interesting, which is why we pulled them.
All right, so it's a 5-5, I'm assuming with a straddle?
Yep, it's 5-5-10 again, but of course the straddle didn't work, but that's okay.
Let's see what's up. We got ace queen in the big blind suited. Pretty premium hand. Let's see what happens.
Let's see.
Okay, button raised to 35. 125. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I was interested into if he decided to 4-bet this hand.
Yep.
Obviously, the ranges are pretty damn wide here, and the button's so wide. Small blind has a fairly large raise and could be doing this with pretty wide holding, obviously, just trying to exploit the button. I wish we had...
and that's a really key point. That's one that we really shouldn't gloss over. I think that ace-queen is a really good 4-bet candidate in a lot of spots, but here specifically, I think it's 100% of the time a 4-bet because the button opening range is wide, and the small blind 3-betting range is also particularly wide, facing a button open. They're going to be 3-betting a lot of medium pocket pairs, a lot of just even offsuit broadways. Like King Jack might even be incentivized to 3-bet here. So fine 4-bet.
We would not be doing our job if we not mention the stack sizes. Obviously, we're very deep here,
Super deep.
which makes it a
Yeah.
easy decision. I like his sizing. Yeah, I like it.
Again, we're in position.
I think it's perfect. Like I normally nag on Ree's sizings. I love your sizing, man.
I like this size.
I'm assuming button fold, small blind calls. Yep.
Wow, Bryce! Oh my God.
I'm so good at poker.
It's like you know what's going on.
So he checks, and we bet 240 into 605. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I could even elect for smaller here, to be honest with you. But this is fine. No,
yeah.
This is fine. This is fine. I don't know what I'm saying. When opponent calls you, I'm a little worried at this point. Obviously, opponent can have a ton of hands. I'm not even going to describe all the hands. His range is still wide when he calls this. Do you have any comments to say? Really wide, I'm assuming you're saying? I think you're muted. Or something. I cannot hear you right now.
We're having really fun technical difficulties on the All In podcast today.
I can hear you now. What were you saying, Ryan?
I was saying, yeah, it's fine. I mean, the opponent smashes this board, as in they can have 10s, 9s, 5s, 10, 9, literally all of it. So
10
I
jack suited, ace 10, ace
everything.
9 suited, ace 5 suited, literally so wide. 7, 8 suited, like he
Right.
can call pretty damn wide here, which I think actually makes his sizing better. Okay. So, this is an interesting spot. Okay. So, there's 1,000 in the pot. Small blind.
We're in a 4-bet pot
behind, and we only have 980 behind. So, we have a SPR a little below 1. So I'm interested as to if it goes check jam or if we elect to just like, I'm so curious as to his sizing.
Also, Bryce, you can hit the little button next to play, and it'll go literally person by person. It'll just go action by action.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, bet. Okay.
Yeah.
We check back. Huh.
I guess I don't hate it for exactly the reasons that we stated before.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. He has a ton of ace 10s, ace 9s, set of 10s, set of 9s. And the
Everything.
thing is worth noting, yeah, our SPR isn't great, but if we jam, we don't get called by anything. We literally get called by nothing. Ace jack, if they decide to make it absolutely just
crazy hero call in a 4-bet pot, that's a little loose.
Other than that, I think it's fine. And if we bet small, when he continues on flop, I expect him to continue on so many turns, and we can allow him to hang himself on the river. So I actually really like this check. I don't know if I check it here. I might bet small and just see what he has. I either bet like third pot, and if he jams on me, I think I fold. Yeah, I actually think that's interesting.
Right. So I think the check back here is really interesting because I would be tempted to bet as well.
Fold. I might bet fold.
And I feel like that's not as profitable as checking here.
Yeah, I like a check. I don't hate betting really small, but you allow yourself to see your river and you allow him to hang himself with the worst hand. So I think it's okay. Let's see what's up on the river. Oh, okay, that's pretty good card. Pretty good card. Pretty good card. I'm assuming he checks. Oh my god, he jammed! Snap! I have nothing to say. Snap all day. What does he have? Does he have like ace 9, ace 10?
No, I don't think we ever got to see the hand.
Oh, we don't know what the other guy has?
We don't know what the other guy had in this one.
What?
Yeah. So apparently the way that this went was that the river rolled off the ace of spades, and I think this was like a snap jam from the small blind, and then he didn't really think terribly long before sticking in the call. Because, 10s and 9s is basically 10s, 9s, and ace king is basically all we're losing to at this point.
Hand one, he calls and he says you're good and mucks. So we win this hand.
Yeah, right. So we don't know what the opponent had, but the opponent calls, or we call, opponent says you're good and mucks.
Okay, yeah. So I'm glad I checked my DMs. Gave you guys the results on that one. But wow. Obviously this is snap all day, and this shows why his check on the turn was more profitable than betting third pot. It doesn't look like we have an ace. It looks like we're scared of it. The ace can be a scare card. And, you outplayed me if I was in this pot. I think I look to bet fold on the turn, which might be easy. But I don't expect a worse hand to jam, and I expect worse ace to call. I expect 10 to call sometimes, just betting small, thinking we're trying to exploit him. But
That's really cool to be like, especially in a 4-bet pot, you're under a lot of pressure there. And on that turn with a 1 SPR, like it's hard not to think about taking the aggressive line when you turn the ace, you know?
yeah, I like the way he played his hand. I
really
like the
like
way
it.
he's played both of his hands. And
Yeah.
that's
Thank
why
you
he's
for
a
both those
professional poker
submissions.
player and he's been
Absolutely.
playing for a long time and has been a profitable guy. Anyways, we have one more hand for you. I think it's
This
your
is
hand.
me.
I did
Let's
not include
go.
a hand this week. I feel like I've been boring you guys a little bit, especially with my
Oh,
heads up
sad.
I played 5 hours of heads up action, 600 hands yesterday. We've got a ton of hands if you guys don't submit next week. But anyways,
That's craziness.
Ryan, would you like to?
Yeah, so this is in the aforementioned Crazy Club. This fine gentleman under the gun is Shelby, who is tagged as a loose aggressive player. Bryce has spectated plenty of me playing in these games, and I think Bryce, you'd tend to agree that having seen the pots that I've played against him, that he does crazy stuff. So the action's going to open up with him opening under the gun to 8. And we're going to get a flat from under the gun 1. And then I opt here to bump it up with the jacks to 32. I think if under the gun and under the gun 1 weren't loose aggressive players and were perhaps either tight passives or tight aggressives, then this could operate more as a flat. But I much prefer the raise here to try to isolate the 2 of them or one of the 2 of them, which is the best case scenario, and take my jacks post. I don't know if you disagree with that.
No, I don't. And I like the sizing. Old Ryan probably would have gone to like
24.
26 here. And I would have just been screaming at you. And I think if you go bigger, they fold a lot of their range because I think they're loose as hell. From what you've told me. But yeah, I like the sizing. I think you absolutely should 3-bet this against 2 loose aggressive players. I know their early position, but I don't care. Based on what you've told me, about this club, I think it's fine. And we'll see what happens. So yeah, I mean a flat
we get 1
fold after calling 8. I think that shows you made the right decision.
Right.
Let's see a flop.
Yeah, it's great
5,
to go
6,
heads
7. So do you feel like this is pretty good flop? Obviously, no overcards.
Right, no overcards here. I think this is fine especially against an under the gun opening range, unless he's insanity. 6-7-5 really shouldn't smash his range very hard. So having the overpair here, I'm going to be betting when checked 2.
If I know you, you're gonna bet about 30.
Yeah, I think I go
you're
pretty small.
Pretty small. You definitely go small here. I hope you don't go small. Oh, I like it. 39's bigger for you. I think he calls wider than you think he calls.
Yeah.
I think he calls you with 9-10.
Legitimately.
Snaps you with 9-10.
I agree.
Any 5, any 6, any 7, any 4, any 8. Yeah, ace jack suited. I think he calls you with backdoor draws. Based on what you've told me, I mean, you guys are pretty deep too. I'm glad you sized up more than what I thought you would.
Right, I agree.
Good bet. Oh god. Oh no.
So this brings up a really interesting thing for viewers in general about paying attention at the poker table, even online, especially live, especially online. He obviously opts to donk lead for for half pot here on the turn. And
oh my god,
you're just like, what is going on here? So I had seen this happen once before where he had done this like early on in the session where he had been in a 3-bet pot. He had check called the flop. He had led the turn for half pot and then overbet jammed the river. The opponent folded, I don't remember what the board was, and he showed 9s, which was like a significant underpair. I think there was at least a king and a queen out there. And he shows the 9s. And so this spot comes up, and I'm like, there's just got to be, like, what in the world is in his donk leading range that's beating me right now?
I just remembered you did send me screenshots of his hand, even though I had not looked at it before the podcast today. So I know the result. But without knowing the result, you have told me about Shelby. We've been on the call before, and you've told me about hands.
Right.
I did not give live advice. Do not worry. Anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think he leads here. Obviously, he knows that he has more 4s than you do, and he obviously could have 4-5, 4-6, ace-4. Like, he has hands that could contain a 4 in here. But I think the most profitable play, if he indeed has a 4, is to check this turn and bomb river. Bomb river. 80% of pot, I don't care. Overpair probably calls. If you bet turn and then just jam it in river, you probably don't get, honestly, as much value. Well, you might get similar value. But I've seen him do this. You told me he's done this with hands that he
Nothing.
cannot do this with. Yeah, nothing.
Literally nothing.
So obviously, you're scared in this spot.
I'm pretty terrified.
Any 4 beats you. Yeah, I mean, he could even do this with a set, knowing you don't have a 4. Like,
Right.
he could do that. I
Right.
don't know if he does do that, but yeah, I'm sure you just flat here. Yeah. So river brings a 10. Complete brick, obviously. If he already had 8, 9, whatever, he had it in pocket 10s. He's a donkey if he's doing that.
I would tend to agree.
Anyways, I'm sure he rips it. Oh, yeah, okay. He rips it.
Yeah.
And you probably go in the tank, probably toss in some time banks. You told me that there was an earlier spot which he bluffed you off of, where you made tighter but absolutely reasonable folds.
Yep.
And that's in the back of your mind here.
Yeah.
So how much do you think about this call or fold? How much does that earlier incident factor in the decision? And what do you ultimately decide upon?
All really great questions. I would say first, my decision making here actually didn't take very long. I think I only took 6 seconds total to make this decision because I had made the call on the turn. And this is something that really makes, you really, when your opponent bets out half pot on the turn, if you're calling without knowing what you're going to do on most rivers, you're not really thinking properly about poker. Like if you don't know how you're going to react to an overcard on the river, if you don't know how you're going to react to a 4 on the river.
Every combo, you need to think about what you're going to do if every card comes out in the deck.
Right.
I mean, obviously, you don't need to have 40 whatever cards in your head, but like
you don't need to go through every one while you're making a decision.
You need to have a game plan.
Right.
And I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, and my game plan was, as long as it was an undercard, there's really not a lot of getting away. When he goes this huge, it was scary.
That's interesting. If ace comes on the river, you're telling me you're folding?
Yes.
Really? You think he's doing this with ace 6, ace 7, ace queen, whatever? I disagree. Wholeheartedly disagree. If you call this turn, what does an ace change? Like, yeah, he gets you off kings, but like, what ace does he bluff with here? Like, I can name a hand. Are you saying he has ace X of diamonds? Okay, sometimes. But
yeah.
No, I think if you call this,
I don't even think this guy's capable.
Opponent, snap this.
Snappy Paul. I agree, especially given our identification of the opponent. That this is just.
We call, and he shows ace king. I was wrong. I was wrong. Ace comes out. You call. You yell at me all day. He played this hand absolutely atrociously. Yes, he blocks aces. Yes, he blocks kings. But what is he targeting? Does he think you can get you off an overpair? Okay, maybe. But
yeah. And this was the only way to do it, was by jamming all in. So I get it from that perspective, but I mean, given his image specifically, I just don't like. If you think that the people at your table think that you're a loose, aggressive opponent, you're going to want to bluff less. And the fact that he did this twice in a 30-minute period just proves to me that you're bluffing too high a percentage of the time, and you're taking a similar line with your bluffs. Makes it really easy for people to pick it out.
I think that's an absolutely huge point, that you need to take the same line with your bluffs and your value hands. The only reason why I can get paid by 1.5x potting it is because I've been caught 1.5x bluffing it.
Exactly.
And obviously, I lean towards having value when I do those bets, but I have to get caught. I love getting caught. When people call me, I am so happy. Call me with third pair, please.
Right.
Because most of the time when I'm doing it, I'm getting paid, and you're calling me with jack shit.
Exactly.
So that's a huge point. I like the way you played this hand. Obviously, you need to pay attention. Obviously, I think it was, I said obviously a ton of times, but you need to pay attention to every single showdown. I don't care if you're in the hand. I don't care if you're not in the hand. You need to tag these players Ryan does a good job of tagging every single player. He takes notes on exact spots of what people do.
Yeah, I
don't
write their hands
necessarily-
in.
I don't necessarily go to that great lengths, and I also have a fairly good memory, but you need
Yeah.
to be note-taking. You need to be paying attention. You can't be all loosey-goosey being being on your phone.
Eating a sandwich at the table.
At the table. I don't know how many times we have to say it. But yeah. Any other? I cannot hear you again. You are having hella issues. Maybe you need to invest in new equipment, Ryan, like I did.
It's sad. It really is.
I'm absolutely kidding. He just bought a new webcam and a microphone, which both
And of
sound very
course,
good, by
the
the
phone
way.
crashes in the middle of a podcast, right when
Yeah.
I buy all this nice stuff.
It's all good. Anyways, I will take this hand off. I will wrap up this amazing week 22 session. Thank you so much, Chase. I had a ton of fun on this podcast.
Yes.
Ryan, you need to invest in some better equipment, but love you anyway. We're going to continue having these great guests. Please continue submitting your hands. We had extra hands this week, and we very much love being able to have the opportunity to hand select and bring you guys this content. So thank you for watching. Smash that like, smash that subscribe button, share with your friends. Any closing thoughts, Ryan?
None, other than do exactly all of the things that Bryce just listed in that order.
Absolutely. Have a great night, guys. Have a good weekend. Good luck on the grind and stay safe.